there's no other Pan-African film festival in Australia. And that's why when you see us in different venues in Parramatta as well as in Sydney, that's just the beginning because
Mm.
there's a gap in the whole country, So, we want to be in Uluru and Darwin, like basically everywhere because we know that there's danger in a different in a single story, like what actually Mamanda said.
It's That's Lit with me, Shazzy D, and it's another exciting episode today because we're going to be talking film festivals, specifically Africa Film Fest Australia, which will be happening in September. Joining me on the show are the directors of Africa Film Fest, Mumbi Hinga and Safia Amadou. Hi, ladies. Welcome to the show.
Hi,
Hi,
Sharon.
hi.
Thanks for having us.
So, just starting off, can you explain what Africa Film Fest Australia is? Maybe Safia, you want to start off?
Yes, of course. So, Africa Film Fest Australia started the inaugural last year in 2024, and it is the only Pan-African film festival that celebrates 54 countries here in Australia.
Amazing. And Mumbi, maybe if you could take this one. How did it all begin? How did you guys find each other? How did you decide, to create this festival?
Well, actually, Safia and myself found each other way before the film festival. We are both film producers, and oh gosh, probably almost 10 years ago, we and some
Mm.
other females came together and we had this interest to tell our stories. And so we had a idea as to what can we do to amplify these stories, even if it's not ours, we can tell other people's stories. And that's how Africa Film Fest Australia was formed.
Amazing. So it was last year, right? That was the first Africa Film Fest.
We started talking way before last year. So, obviously, when you're starting something like this, we don't really have the kind of, resources to start something like this. And so we started having this conversation in maybe late 2022 and got really serious 2023. So it's been marinating way before, and then we officially launched last year in 2024.
For the inaugural, Mumbi and I, we were like, okay, we're just gonna do the film festival. We see how we go for the first time, and we end up having over 2,000 people who came across the 3 days of the festival. So that was a huge success, and I think we're still in awe about how great the festival was for everybody. Um, and yeah, and we anticipated it's gonna be even better this year.
Yes. And speaking of this year, so it runs from the 4th to the 7th of September, and it's running both at the Opera House and in Parramatta. Could you talk about the decision? What kind of inspired, the decision to have it in both locations?
So people who's coming from the city, they have been saying, "Oh, geez, Parramatta is too far away. Could you bring it in the city?" And then we're like, "It's not that far away." That's where the community is basically. So we wanted to have one food with within the community in Western Sydney. We were already able to establish our relationship with Riverside. And then we were like, hang on a minute, maybe we can do Opera House. Why not? So then we have that conversation with Opera House, which was absolutely, they were very keen to have us. So now we're having 2 days at the Opera House and then another 2 days at the Riverside. But we're not screening both films. So we choose specifically two films that can be screened at the Opera House.
And speaking of the films, what films are screening? Mumbi, maybe you want to share?
Yes, so we've got eight feature films that are screening from different parts of the continent and the diaspora. And how many short films are we doing now, Safia?
I believe it is nine
About
short.
nine, yes, nine short films. So our opening film is from Nigeria. I do not come to you by chance. It's, hilarious, plus, just really interesting and touching on the theme of uh, it's fictional, but there's a touch of, how the Nigerians comes. And on the second day at the Opera House, we've got this powerful film called Fanon. It's a very powerful story, very interesting about this psychologist from Martinique who went to Algeria and he was working in this psychiatric hospital, a lot to do with independence and the revolution. And then at Riverside, we've got a few more films, and another one is a Somalian film, our first time to have a film from Somalia, about a
So
girl called
excited
Safia. It's
about
based
that.
on a true story. Samia, Samia, yes, and Samia wanted to be in the Olympics, and she eventually ended up going. And other films that are being represented, other countries being represented are Ghana, our closing film called The Fisherman. It's so hilarious. It's definitely a must watch. I mean, they are all must watch films, but I know The Fisherman is Safia's.
My favorite.
Yes, I think Safia, she's getting excited about her favorite film. And then we've got this
That's right.
powerful documentary about Sudan. Powerful documentary about Sudan. It's called Sudan Remember Us. And based on what's happening in Sudan at the moment, a lot of people are displaced. There's still a lot of instability in the country. It's an important conversation to have. And we're very, very excited to feature this film. And then we've got, geez, my memory. What
The
am I
heart is a
missing, Safia?
muscle. The heart is a
The
muscle.
Heart is a Muscle. Yeah, a South African film. Yeah, so the thing is, when you're trying to represent 54 countries, it becomes very tricky. So our goal is to expand and to be able to have as many countries represented as possible. So we're getting there. We're starting with 8 feature films, 8 different countries, a few more in the short films, and we can't wait to expand that.
How exciting. And I feel that kind of touches on my next question, which will just work well, which is what are some films you're excited to see? So I guess, Safia, you jumped in there.
For,
The one.
for me, the one of the films that I'm really excited to share is Fanon, and one of the reasons that I'm so excited about is that I I feel ashamed of not knowing his work in the past, and I'm like I'm just wondering. I'm like, we never really in school talked about him and his he did an incredible work. I mean, he influenced Malcolm X. He influenced a lot of great leaders in Africa and in the US and even in Iran. So not knowing about him was a big shock for me and his work that he has done. So I'm very excited about Fanon, of course, and as Mumbi saying, the closing night films called The Fisherman, which is so, family oriented, funny, hilarious, and it's just, yeah, it's a great way of closing the film festival, I believe.
Mumbi, do you want to add? You could talk about either any films that are screening in September or even any from the past that really, stick with you or made you smile.
I'm very happy about all the films, obviously, because we selected them. But one of the things I just wanted to add on what Safia said on Fanon, as we continue watching films, one of the things we've realized is there's some very important stories that happened in Africa that we didn't know. Earlier this year, we co-presented a film with the Opera House called it's a documentary called the
Soundtrack to a coup d'etat.
soundtrack to a coup d'etat, and it's about Congo. It's about Lumumba and his assassination, and we just we heard about some of our leaders from our own countries who are collaborating with Lumumba, but we didn't know that, and that's because for most of us post-colonialism, the education system was designed in such a way that we were not meant to know these stories. And so what I've realized is even we still have so much to learn about ourselves. It was such an eye opener. I remember one of our friends telling us that her parents in Kenya used to have this big poster of Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba, and she used to be like, he's not even from our country. But then after watching the documentary, she realized how significant his role was, during before and after independence. And so we feel like we have such a responsibility to tell all these diverse stories. So, and that's why we get excited about different aspects. We even have a story about music from Guinea,
Guinea-Bissau.
Guinea-Bissau, and I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, from Guinea-Bissau, it's called Teregu. And then you realize there's so many untold stories that we have. And the thing is, when the stories are not told by us, other people they choose specific topics that would appeal to maybe certain audiences or that are palatable. But then we've realized if we tell the stories ourselves, they're going to be much more diverse. They're going to be, more, I guess, genuine and authentic. And yeah, so I'll point that out. And what am I excited about this time? I think maybe because I am a mom, I have two young daughters. The stories of Nawi and
Yeah.
Samia.
Yeah.
It's obviously about girls overcoming, but it's also a very inspirational. They're both very inspirational stories about determination and how we can back these girls up, and you can see some of the support that these girls had from the community. Samia, it was from her father, and for Nawi, it was from the school, from her teachers, and how they molded her, how they saw her gift. And I think those are the two stories that have really touched me as a mom.
I was curious about how you go about choosing the films. You've touched on how important it is to actually have people, from the African diaspora who actually are the ones making and, producing, directing, etc. How do you go about, picking which ones end up in the festival?
Yeah, so in Australia, I guess what we're trying to do here it is being a platform for our our community, our African Australian filmmakers. So what we did since last year is to create an EOI where they can submit their films, and then we go through a selection criteria, and then we select which film we wanted to screen. What Mumbi and I did realize that unfortunately there is no many films or storytelling telling by our people, and we were wondering why and what could be the support that we can give it to them. So that's one of the reasons that we decided to um, have this initiative called Industry Networking Events. We're partnering with actors,
Mhm.
and we wanted to bring people from the industry and the filmmakers have a discussion about what could be the challenge that are facing. Um, Maybe they just don't know where to go to get that support. So we decided to have it on a Friday morning, just after the opening night, of Friday morning, the 5th of September, from 10 to 12. And regarding the selection of the feature films, what we normally do, Mambi and I, we have our film consultant called Paul, and we kind of go through the list of what other festival has done in the past. Um, and we go through the list, and if we kind of seen a film that we were interested to watch, we contacted directly the festival. I mean, the film distributor. Um, this is how we've been doing that because it's been only on Mombi and us. Eventually, we would like to be able to open it up more, and it would be good for us to also have a jury where people can be able to watch the films. So yeah, that's been the way that we've been doing that for the last year and this year. Eventually next year it will be a way the discussion again to open up between Mambi and I to open it up to receive more film and that we can be able to watch. Yeah.
Okay, great. And what I also thought is great about what you two are doing is you don't just hold film screenings. It's not just the festival on, the days, like in this case, September. It's screenings throughout, the year. You've also hosted, I think it was Goodbye Julia. I think you were also involved
Yes.
in
Yes.
screening, yeah,
Yes.
during Refugee Week.
Yeah.
How important is it to you that you give these films a platform, maybe a bigger platform for audiences to see them in cinema?
Yeah, that's very important for us because and you've talked about having an all year round sort of screening. It's important because the thing is to engage people. They need to see, nowadays people are so overwhelmed with tabs and events and all that. And I feel like to make an impact, sometimes there has to be, not just one off per year. I mean, it can work, but for us, we see it as to really engage with our communities. we need to find a way where we can connect at different points. And how we can do that is taking advantage of certain circumstances, like what you mentioned, Goodbye Julia, that was during Refugee Week. And so we feel like, okay, Refugee Week is an important part. How can we contribute to that? We can contribute to that through highlighting some stories that could be related to, Refugee Week, maybe highlighting their journeys and what stories for refugees. And that's what we did with partnership with the City of Sydney and the State Library of New South Wales. And it's important for us to work with organizations as such because, obviously our resources are still limited, even though we've been very, very fortunate that Arts and Cultural Exchange in Parramatta, ACE, basically said, you know what, let's have this baby together, we'll build it. And they've been very instrumental to Africa Film Australia getting to where we're at this point. But obviously we still have to find other ways to reach other people. And eventually, as Safia mentioned earlier, there's no other Pan-African Film Festival in Australia. And that's why when you see us in different venues in Parramatta as well as in Sydney, that's just the beginning because there's a gap in the whole country, so we want to be in Uluru and Darwin, like basically everywhere, because we know that there's danger in a single story, like what actually Mamanda said. And so I hope I'm answering your question to say that we want to be there in different points of people's lives and activities to really, we want to get rid of that single story because we are so diverse as Africans.
Absolutely.
And different countries, different cultures, different opinions. And the more we can amplify that, I guess the better for the continent, but also for social cohesion here in Australia.
I agree.
Just to add on also to the point of Mumbi said, I think also for me, what I did notice is that when we have a screening as African or even as people who doesn't know, who's non-African coming together and watching a film, there is a healing journey about that. And also the conversation that goes after that kind of make people understanding more a context of worrying aware about, or even has a healing effect on us that make us all come together and wanted to celebrate and then share those stories. With Goodbye Julia, I mean, it was very emotional, and I absolutely love the fact that we brought two speakers, one from North Sudan and from South Sudan. They all come together and hug each other to say, we are together in this journey. It's been tough for both of us. We have to come together in the way of healing and seeing each other as sisters and brothers. You know what I mean? So it has a healing journey that it is incredible. It's not something that you can do when you're just sitting in front of the TV. It doesn't have the same impact. So that's why we like to go to from different places and doing that through the whole year and activated all of those centers to bring awareness about what is happening in the continent and also to be able to celebrate story like this.
Mumbi, you mentioned how you think, the danger of the single story, like Chimamanda said. What I think is great also that you both do along those lines is you've held some other workshops in the past. So you have done, an animation, I think it was an animation workshop. I think this year you're also doing a workshop to do with comic books. So you're really not just about film. You actually are doing other arts, can I say, and kind of ways to get people from the diaspora to to create content. So I wanted to hear again from both of you, you can jump in, just about how important it is not only to bring these kind of workshops, but to have people from the African diaspora as well, kind of leading them and giving their expertise and knowledge to these workshops.
Generally, in the African culture, most communities were big storytellers, and stories were told in different ways, but very mainly through art, through dance, through music, and film as well. And one of the things that Safia mentioned is that we were quite surprised that we know African filmmakers exist here in Australia, African Australian filmmakers, but what was heartbreaking was just not being able to find content that we could screen made by African Australians. And so we started asking ourselves, why? What? There must be a reason. It's not that people don't want to, but obviously there must be barriers to that. And so we started trying to understand by asking questions: what is lacking? What support do people need? And based on the feedback that we got, people don't, there's the resources, the networking, we are still pretty new to Australia. So in the sense of our own communities, we don't have deep networks in this industry. And it can be quite, I guess, uh,
Overwhelming.
overwhelming and frustrating for people who are trying to get into the industry. But after years of attempting, you feel like it's not going anywhere. So we feel that, we have a responsibility to contribute to what we can to make sure that people come back to storytelling, or amplify their stories, because they might be doing their stories but not necessarily putting them out there. And that's why we started with the workshops, like the industry network Safia has talked about. We've got African Australians coming in and speaking with industry experts. It's been sponsored by AFTRS. AFTRS is one of the most significant film and television institutions here in Australia. So it's such an incredible honor to have an industry forum supported by them. And we are expecting that a few key figures in the screen industry will be there, not only to share information, but also to connect and hopefully start building that network for our community. And then on top of that, we have, for yet another year, partnered with UTS, University of Technology Sydney, to bring in what you've mentioned, the comic workshop, together with Somto, who is coming from Nigeria. And what Somto does is he's working with more than 200 animation studios across Africa to, not only create animation, to build animation within Africa, but to also outsource that animation. Because what we've come to understand is countries like Australia, America, Canada are actually outsourcing animation from other places. And we're like, we know Africans are bright, we know they're smart, we know they do a fantastic job. And that is also a place where they can outsource talent from. And so we've got an animation workshop with at UTS, supported by UTS, which is targeting young people. So we want to start nurturing them from a young age to keep their interest in, to see what is possible for them in this world. So we'll have a 2-day workshop at UTS, and that's the weekend before the actual film festival. And that's also part of what we're doing for the festival.
And we want it to be also has a similar film festival. Animation and gaming in Africa is something that is booming, and it would be good to kind of exploring that, in Australia with the young generation who's really into animation. I remember watching mangas and now seeing this generation creating their own manga, but based on the African stories, just so powerful and so cool to see that you're like, oh, great. I wish I have that when I was, when I was teenager. Those are the kind of things I would love to watch,
I just want to ask the both of you if you could let us know what you hope people get out of watching the films at your festival.
I mean, for me, it's merely coming, connecting, celebrating story of Africans and filmmakers. And hopefully he will have a long-lasting impact on you and reflect of what we can do better. I mean, for me, it's about also which kind of legacy as African are we living here in Australia, So yeah, it is a kind of big reflections on that. But for me, the most important it is come together. Let's come together and celebrate. It is a powerful things to do.
I echo exactly what Safia has said, but also to add that people to come with an open mind, come with an open mind, be prepared to embrace other cultures, other communities. And whilst it's very important to represent your own community, come and see something from somewhere else. So for example, if for me as someone who migrated from Kenya, yes, of course I want to go and support the Kenyan film, but I also want to find out, like I want to learn about, Samia and, other stories. And I think that is what will bring us together. Because what I normally say, I usually give this example. I know we're running out of time, but we talk about keyboard warriors, right? People can be very mean to each other behind the screen, things they
Yeah.
wouldn't say to people face to face. And so for me, that helps me understand that the more you get to know people and
Yes.
understand them, I think the better we can treat each other, the better we can
Yeah.
understand each other. And film is such a powerful platform to get to learn all these stories. So let's do this, guys. Let's get to know each other, whether you're from Africa or just a supporter of Africa or just someone who is curious and loving film.
Mm,
Let's
mm.
do this.
Wonderful. It has been such a pleasure having both of you on the show today. Thank you so much, Mumbi and Safia.
Thank you so much, Sharon,
Thank
for
you
having
so
us.
much, Sharon. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of That's Lit. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. And drop me a comment. Will you be attending Africa Film Fest this year? And is there a film by an African filmmaker that you've seen that really inspired you? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you again in the next episode.